honor song. Hi, Soto Feather, may be seated. Thank you for the beautiful songs, gentlemen. As we begin the formal part of our program today on this very solemn day, where we remember and pay tribute and show respect to those that didn't make it home. We also celebrate our resilience that we're still here, for those of us that are still walking Mother Earth. To welcome you to this territory is a young man that I've seen grow up. I was a good friend of his father, and still good friends with his family. And for those that remember the late Spuddy Kitchemonia, he was not only a good man, a leader of this community, but also a legendary hockey player. And I distinctly remember number 20 when I was a little guy growing up and watching him play. And as a result, I got to meet his son, who I'm very proud of also, to see him grow up here in the community and today to be your leader. I'd like to call him up, Chief Lee Kitchemonia, to make welcoming remarks on behalf of the nation.
Thank you. Thank you for that very kind introduction, Mr. Arkan. I'd like to start off this morning by thanking the elders and thanking the singers for the songs that they sing for us today. Very important that we start the day off in a good way. We had our pipe ceremony this morning. It was a very beautiful one. We prayed for good things to happen today. Now, the reason why we're here today is it's a very solemn day, but at the same time, gives us closure. Gives us closure, and it also opens up the door for more questions. What happened? What really happened? You know, I've lived in this community my entire life. I've heard the stories from my dad, my late father, Leonard Kitchemonia. You know, I've heard them from my mom as well too. My mom Stella, she's sitting here with me today. I have my granddaughter here with me today, and my youngest daughter. They're the ones that are giving me strength. I think about all those children that went to school. You know, and that's what it really boils down to. Is seeing your kid leave your house in the morning time, not realizing that you'll never ever see your child again for as long as you live, not knowing any answers to where those children are gone. All you know is that they're gone to school and they've never returned. I can't imagine what those parents and grandparents would have felt like. All I know is that it must have been a hurt that nobody could ever imagine. So we're here today to acknowledge what happened. I'd also like to thank the visitors we have, the RCMP, the different churches, FSIN, the representatives from FSIN. We have some speakers from AFN. National Chief Archibald couldn't make it, but she will be here by Zoom. She'll be making a statement for our community. You know, people have asked me in the last couple of months, when we find something, is that going to be the end of it? I think all this has done is it's opened up the door for more questions. Are there more graves out there? We don't know that. We got caught up in the snow, so the numbers that we have here today are the numbers we're presenting, but it also opens up the door for more questions. It's going to be a very tough time for our community, knowing that we had unmarked graves in our community, in our common areas that we drive every day, that we walk every day. We pass by them, never realizing that there was graves there. And that's got to be the most hurtful part, is the way they were hidden. Who does that? Somebody has to be held accountable for it. And that's the question that I have, is who's going to be accountable for this? You know, these are not just instances where a principal or a teacher is disciplined. You know, these could potentially be, you know, murdered children, hidden. We don't know any of these answers, so we need to fight for these records to see what happened, to see who these graves belong to. You know, they could be our aunts, our uncles, our grandfathers, or things like that. You know, they're vanished just off the face of this earth, never to be seen again. That's the hardest part. These next few months, it's going to be a very difficult time for our community to start healing. I don't know if we'll ever get closure. We're gonna pray for closure. I pray for closure every day, but I don't know if I'll ever see it in my lifetime. Maybe in my children's lifetime, my grandchildren's lifetime, they'll find out what really happened. But the further away we get from the actual event, you know, those facts, they seem to be blurred further, the further we go. So I want to keep my words short here today. I know we have a lot of speakers and we only have an hour to get our message out. So my message is to Canadians across this country and everybody across the world. Listen to our story. These are real stories. These are real people. Think of your young ones. Think of your grandchildren. Think about how you kiss them every morning when you send them out to school. You'll see them again. But these children never were given that chance. These parents were never given that chance. So my message is to the world, listen. Let's give these families the respect that they deserve. Let's give these children the respect they deserve. Let them rest in peace. So with that, I'll just keep my words short, and I'd like to acknowledge everybody that's here, all the visitors that are here. It's really nice to see everybody coming out. So with that, Keeseekoose.
Hi, Chief Lee Kitchemonia. As we get into the second part of our program, I want to take this opportunity to follow up on Chief Kitchemonia's welcoming to the Lieutenant Governor of Saskatchewan and his wife Donna. I also want to acknowledge the leaders, the chief. I see Chief Cody's here, and the numerous councillors, and I want to say at this point regarding the council members who are here and along with our leadership is these young warriors are the part of a new generation of warriors that don't have anything to hide anymore, because now we understand blameless shame. And when these young warriors step up in positions of leadership, they give their lives away. And I think because of that commitment, whether they do good or not as good, they've still given their lives away. And their children and their wives and their partners suffer because they've given that life away. And I think they deserve a nice round of applause. So I'd like to encourage you to give our leadership a nice round of applause. And just a follow-up comment to Chief Kitchemonia's comment. Today we're wearing orange t-shirts. We have this flag that's in front of this podium, and it says every child matters. That's not just a saying. Don't let it be just a saying that's used out there by charlatans and profiteers who are making money off the backs of our misery. This is a real statement. These 3 children you see up front, representing those that didn't make it home, their lives matter. We're going to make sure that we don't get caught up in this just being a saying. This is for real. Every child matters. And right now, our children are being used as an economic driver in this province to keep the economy going, and that has to stop. The next speaker is the project manager of what's transpired here with the findings that are going to be revealed this morning. But he's also a past leader of your community. He's a lifelong friend of mine. We have shared many rough experiences and we've shared many good experiences. About 15 years ago, the first leader to reveal the abuses that he had suffered in residential school was then National Chief Phil Fontaine. It wasn't very long after that the FSIN Chiefs Assembly gathered in Saskatoon. And the person who had the strength at that time to reveal, and let's think about it. Let's go back that 15 years. None of us wanted to talk about it. We were all part of Canada's darkest secret. And the first leader in Saskatchewan to reveal what he had experienced in terms of physical, psychological, emotional, and sexual abuse was this man. And I'm proud to call him my friend. He's a project manager of this, and I'd like him to give his report. My friend, Ted Keeseekoose. How about a nice round of applause?
Wait, that's my own going easy book. Kina. Kinis na pe. Kwe wak, nini wak. Tu nini wak. Tu kwe wak. Zugogi na kina piutek. Ma pizza wat. Apsinakta. Miwe anisna pe troen gamino gozimen. Apsini po mine gozimen. Miwe paginanik. Onakinigewen. Zumina gigi kwewen. Uzitsigewdinan. Miwe anis kai kitwat me osachi nisna pe. Zugige tambi aginanik. Miwe pimatiziwen. I want to share with you to our community, to our people, to our country, and to the world. We as Indian people were given something very special. We were given a language, a culture, traditions, and ceremonies. Through the creation story of our elders of long ago. We have the oral history within our community. We have the oral history direction that is given to us from stories from long ago. And it's time to release the story of us as individuals, our families, and our community. I want to first of all acknowledge each of you that are here today, who come here to honor us. I want to acknowledge all of you that are here to show your respect to our community. I want to express my gratitude to the Keeseekoose survivors and our knowledge keepers, our churches, the Catholics, the Christians, the Anglicans within our community that have guided us within this process. I want to recognize those that have done the ceremonies and the prayers, our elders, our pastors within our community. Without their work, we would have the strength to move the work forward. I know we are also helped by the ancestors on the other side in guiding us through the process we went through. I want to recognize our lodge holders. All the elders made their contribution. And we have Elder Cuthbert Gishane, Stella Kitchemonia, Ted Stronkwell, and Sarah Janile. And about 25 other women elders in our community and men in our community. Keeseekoose, Key, and Cote First Nation membership are all part of our extended family, and we welcome them here today because a lot of those students from those two communities beside us attended the St. Philip's Residential School and the Fort Pelly Residential School. Because Cody will be doing a similar project in the spring. I want to acknowledge our singers for the songs and the elders that led the pipe ceremony this morning so we can proceed in a very positive, good way here today. The songs, the ceremonies, and prayers keep us connected to the Creator and to the land. I want to express my gratitude to our political leadership, our council members, for the confidence they put in us as survivors and the elders. Our chief has recognized that healing is not a political event. The work that has been done within our community, it's not politics. It's a human issue. Like the chief said, it has to be dealt with. And like the news that there were 215 grave sites in British Columbia, triggered all survivors across this country. We knew that we had to go through the same process. And we did, and it was hard. It wasn't easy. As you read our media release, Keeseekoose, we had 2 residential schools. The historical record of Keeseekoose, the oral tradition, includes what survivors directly experienced. What survivors saw, what survivors heard regarding the activities at the Fort Pelly and St. Philip's Residential School. These stories have been part of our truth-telling for the last 125 years. We all knew that we would find grave sites. These stories of abuse have been shared in testimony to the independent assessment process and the Truth and Reconciliation hearings across this country. I want to share with you, although the information regarding the missing usually fell on deaf ears, it was not that they could not hear, but they did not believe our survivors. Many Canadians still cannot believe that a human being could treat another human being, especially a child, like the way we were treated. Many in the churches could not believe that those committed to God could treat children that way. I have shared my abuse story publicly. And I can tell you firsthand that these things happened to myself and every member of my family and many families in our communities, surrounding communities. Today, we are announcing that there were 54 hits. 54 hits. Cassandra, if you want to unveil the orange cover of proof of our hits. As you can see on the flag, wall maps, 42 were found on the Fort Pelly site, and 12 were found at St. Philip's. The locations for scanning were identified by survivors and knowledge keepers from oral history. The ground penetrating radar simply validated our oral history. Keeseekoose survivors and families want closure as reclamation re-traumatizes our families. Every time a missing and murdered woman or a girl is identified, it is a reminder of the loss of one of our loved ones. Every announcement of residential schools, residential grave sites, re-traumatizes us survivors and our families and our communities. Survivors want closure and healing. But we also know we need to share our story. There are needs to be done, like truth telling. We need to support our family members on their journey to the other side. In our language, truth is very important. Tepwewin. It's all about truth telling. Within our ceremonies, we do not have a president. We don't have resolutions. We don't have motions. There is equality within our ceremonies. And if anything is going to carry us as we move forward, it's going to be truth telling and conciliation. Not reconciliation, but conciliation. We have reached out to the NCTR. We've reached out to the Archdiocese. The Bishop, Don Bolen, is here as partners. Because victims and perpetrators need to heal if we are going to take a step closer to closure. Forgiveness is a hard thing to do, my friends, but it is a powerful because it empowers. And as a survivor, I am the only person that can forgive It is a choice I make. I want to thank you for attending this historical event for our community. Your presence acknowledges our oral tradition. You are acknowledging the pain of each survivor and family member, but you are also acknowledging the hope we have to heal. As you and I look at residential school, we could see very clearly the direct impact of colonization. We as people in our communities are treaty right holders. My inherent right comes from the Creator. I'm a treaty right holder. My inherent right, like I said, I repeat, that comes from the Creator. We are sovereign people with a right to govern ourselves. We are sovereign people to govern ourselves. I repeat that. The colonization process, the colonial governments today decides on our rights. We got the Indian Act, the Department of Indian Affairs, and the residential schools. It was either assimilation or genocide. Little has changed. There are more of our children in foster care than there were in residential school today. Colonization is holding our families, our communities back. And there has to be a movement to destroy the Indian Act that controls our people. Many of our people were uncomfortable and angry when they were told 54 potential grave sites. Yes, there is lots of anger to go around, my friends. But the survivors and elders know that this is also an opportunity to choose and move forward and deal with the healing process that we have to do amongst ourselves. Everybody talks about the when, the why, the where. But I want to share with you the how we're going to do it. In Keeseekoose First Nation. With the support of our elders, our survivors, our churches, and our leadership, and our council members that sits in front of you. As a reference, truth telling is the first step, which I mentioned. Everyone has truth to tell. They have it in them. And every survivor has value to offer to the process. This reclamation project, it was guided by the survivors and knowledge keepers. Our people led with ceremonies, fasting and prayers. We taught the culture, we teach the culture, and we're still learning. Elders have directed that we need to use traditional teachings. We need to be humble. We need to forgive, but never, never forget. We need to love those that have caused us great harm. Forgiveness is an act of love. We need conciliation, my friends. We hear many calls for reconciliation. Our challenge is reconciling back to when. We cannot identify a time we would like to go back to. We are open. We describe seeking after this reconciliation myth. People talk about reconciliation. I use the W-R-E-C-K, reconciliation, that's happening across this country. We got to have conciliation. We are promoting real conciliation, where we can jointly build a relationship and recognizing the identity of our people, of our ancestors, of our language, our culture, our traditions, our ceremonies. Our trauma was not created by our people. Outsiders brought this pain, and most would say with good intentions. We have waited for healing from the outside, but we know it will only happen inside ourselves and inside our communities and within our families. And that's a choice we as First Nations people from the Keeseekoose have to deal with. We know that change has to come to the community. Using our traditional teachings, our churches that pray, our pastors, our Catholic parishioners from our community, we must respect each and one another. We know closure will have to be done by ourselves. How will this be done? I have already talked about truth telling by everyone. We need to seek real conciliation, not search for a time we can reconcile back to. We are the treaty right holders with the inherent right. And we have to get to understand that an inherent right is a spiritual process from the Creator down to the people. The inherent right is defined by the Creator and is in our own creation story that is passed down for many, many, many years. The rules and processes are very clear, and they are taught in our ceremonies. Not once a year, not once a week, but every day. We have 60 ceremonies in our community, over 1,200 protocols. We are wealthy with our culture and our traditions within our community. Outside solutions in mental health has not helped us heal. It just doesn't work. We need to take responsibility for our own healing. We did not create the problem, but we need to create the solution. And we all know what the solution is. The elders have an on-land camp where we use the land to heal. It's a place of peace. Knowledge keepers will be providing mental health supports to families and community members. We need to respect our family members by acknowledging they so will be maintaining each of these 54 grave sites that we have discovered. We will be leading the research as a community to identify who is buried. We have already started this process with a book, Nin Distikaz, I Have a Name. Example of those pictures on the wall, there's people, students there we don't know. And we got to find a name for them. We are working with the school to create a virtual museum, our own school, so the records that we locate can educate. We are partnering with the parish and archdiocese to share their records. The bishop is here to commit to working together. We have already created a draft memorandum of agreement with the NCTR. Stephanie Scott, who is the executive director of NCTR. In closing, my friends, I would like to close with some thoughts regarding the apology from the Pope. Many of you have heard that there's a delegation going over to Rome. Many people want an apology. Many people feel it's too late and they really don't care if he apologizes or not. So an apology, the key to an apology, it's like our Prime Minister that apologized to survivors. Many survivors did not feel comfortable with his apology. It didn't come from the heart, it was politics. There wasn't a next steps to his apology. And it's going to be the same thing with the Pope. I will be meeting the bishops within a week to 10 days in Vancouver. Getting a working relationship with them across Canada. And the purpose of it is the specific region of Saskatchewan, with the bishop being here. Because when the Pope apologizes and when he comes over to North America, his bishops of Canada are going to be doing the groundwork. And that groundwork has to be real. Working with survivors in communities across this country. Far too long, us survivors been thrown under the bus. It's the people in the communities that are feeling the pain and the hurt and the sorrow. So, my dear friends, I share the apology of the Pope. If he apologizes, that's a decision each and every one of you either accept or deny. The only difference between me and the Pope, he prays more than I do. He's a human being, just like us. But he's rich. So with that, my dear friends, my survivors, the leadership, I acknowledge each and every one of you. Like today is a very historic day for our community and our families. So with that, I thank you very much.
Thank you, Ted, for those very powerful, emotional, and truthful statements. We have a few speakers who will be coming up, are the true warriors of the Canada's darkest secret. And I want to ask Cuthbert to start making his way up here. If you could, Cuthbert. I had to tell Cuthbert ahead of time because he's hearing challenged. So I just want to say before the knowledge keepers, residential school survivors, many of whom the settler community refers to as elders, as they come up, I recall when a 215 was announced and how everybody wanted to make donations to residential school survivors. And I recall being overwhelmed by all of these groups wanting to make donations. Anytime one of them would get a hold of me on the phone, I would say, "You don't even know who we are. Why do you want to make a donation to us when you don't know who we are?" And it's important that the Canadian public and the settler community out there, if you're going to talk about this, know who we are. My number was 781. The next 4 people who are going to come and speak also had a number. We are more than numbers. We are human beings. And I know that we are valued in our communities and in our families. With that, I'd like to call on my friend Cuthbert to make an opening statement on behalf of the residential school survivors from this community. Yeah, nice round of applause for Cuthbert.
Kwe, ni gagi smoke, maga biziguyan. Ni gagi smawe tewe kan ka absent kana ka moat. Sumagi ma kana ma venis wat. Ki tone no. Ma kwe gata ka bet. Ba so we ki piu te menanek ma wa saka piu. Piu nis ka wat. Ba ki na ma kan sattegen skuna kan ma ga pisa e. Kina kome gom. Ogni gata sentang qui non come ta. Eu te che te kagim. Kagi sana cinta penotsi. Sugo huegam comment. Anin guys in quesiment meosa. Ni pwa gut queen intamen. Så te ventas ni go gates ma vet besko kana ge go ta bentak. Anin ge go on tas sin. Har svege go te ga gi mat kame gis wat we ne gi nak. Mogne ne ga no katam wat. Visen agat. Ge kete te gi wapen tan ge go. Lanta si sege si. Uske uute saunung, skunegan viipa ke viinaga vi maatstoat ke go. Viitas kate sentamaan nonkom. Se on sakana api kuusi jangan ke uteni gaan. Se min entameng. Vi ke go. Vi naagat vensagan sungite wen. Ha ni pa. Ni naagat ventaamen vi kimaavat maaga. Ska gigitat. Ni politisen tamen we det gawa tam. Minuke ko heutini kan menos seven. Langana taswege ko ti. Ha utiga kain quesementa we kwenitok. Ma pessa. Miwinin nagatoentan magamijinta we xianisna pek. Was me gotak izitsige wakmonias. Langanata sweke kununkum we gabsikuyan we nabugusendam menoge ku ha memenekektuan.
Hey. Thank you, Cuthbert. I'd like to ask Stella to start making her way up to the podium. She's right here. What happened in this process of brainwashing, genocide, is we were changed from a matriarchal society to a patriarchal society, which in itself was very destructive. And today the grandmothers are taking over, the women are taking over. And one of our leaders here in this community is Stella Kitchemonia. I'd like to ask her to say a few words. Stella?
And for sure, there are a few words. I'm not the speaker for long-winded speaker, but I welcome all of you, and I was happy to had the opportunity to sit by Ogimawakan and all the people that are here. Senator, it was really nice to listen to him. There was a lot to pick up from what he said. It's true, we don't know who all those people are. And I didn't look at the pictures of the school on the wall yet. Maybe I'll recognize some, I don't know. But this is very good opportunity for all of us to be here and to know what's happening to these people. May masagagi unyang gito. Kenin kayo ninitan kawe dinos katoyin. Nawats nda na kawe apit sa sagana sibuan. Patanining ninak kawe kawin sagana sim si. Gas tunwin sagana simon. Gikina magianis ko. I'd like to acknowledge all the ones that are at the table. Ugimakan siguro tugimagan niwan. Mingiwe so piu take dinantawe ni Marc to feel welcome out here. God, we to feel strange with us or to feel strange that they are here. Sige go ukagi tu tabuat kamach tuat go. Me ngay kit pakan go awyo katasindan asing ni pagego kita sindam kita sindan nawa bagi kikituat me bigwech kinakobininim.
Thank you. Thank you, Stella. Very proud mother. Very proud grandmother, a kokum, and she's also has some chapans. Thank you, Stella. I'd also like to call up my friend Ted Strongquill to come and make some comments. And as he makes his way up here, you'll notice and you have noticed that the language is being spoken both by fellow residential school survivors, but by myself also. We had all been brainwashed into believing that we had lost our languages. And we understand that sometimes we can't communicate with the young people with those languages, but it's important that we educate the public of how important they are in maintaining our survival. With that in mind, I'd like to turn it over to my friend Ted Strongquill.
Kuego, Kenina, Kinaganim Kunema, Pitakai, Ukimaka Maga Vindagaguing, where Chiogima, Bajuit, the Kanaga Cottagan, coming on the street. Oh, where up is Manakis Jigat, where Ma Hagi no ma Hagi Tenino, Kikiton and Yok, Greganokiaganak, where Nantuk. Kawichi Gwingoma, Anin Manogum, Kinagego guys of Antamangum Manogum. Opposite could no re-enter in the Manogum. Kiguma Gawitas and Tamang. Oh, wait, this at you. Chiguma get at you. Ogonaikananga Gim Kigate again, was Mena and Mitina. Abinotiak. Janice Navega and Gita Shema Ogima, Gitanawaka and Anik. ke ma gi no tam ta sim to we ke tam ko ga gi ma kanwet mi ma ke in sing ma ni sa jo ma ge ta jo ma ka gi ken ta simen wenen anin kut no ta se no ge ta to ta ma ki oni ken ta wan da go we ni sa jo we ge ta jo ma gam kon da ki oni ken ta wan da me o sa ni ti o ta bi asa kina ti o ka me kon yo chit to na ana me o ka ma kon ke we me ka te ko ne ka sa ki be ai sa o we port pale ga ta me ma ki et nong mi ma ga on chi ma ga mi ma anis ki ma mi no at anis na be waps ki we ge me ka te ko ne kina mi ma ga be o be na ma ta ma we kina ti o ka me kon se ko na me o ka me kon na mi ma Abinochiak, mi magi sa gina into ma kan sutte in skune ganan. Pigo skune ganan we pio skia in skune ganan. Anin kam sigia yas non. Mita sa asigi anokki okige. Mi we ka yo ki ma wat ke we ti jo wabanong. No me se go no gom ma. Kitoan inin. Tap sko gano to etamo goe. Ka gina mani ken don ta. When is it jo? Me anis kan je kent as iemand. Uske baby in sakita se ma oke mi ma in sionachin to mi ma. Na me se ko no ma. Keni na je skituan. Ga ko te tamo no go ma. Tamno ko na ko no le sit chikan den ma. When ni ben ka ben na go mi ma ke go ko chigemen. Iga samana ni na ki ni ken to me guys me te ka ga gi to at me osa was me yo guta ka ki o ga ta sin ta man me osa e ko me mi me api ki pchen ko e me to ga ken ta mo na me se ko no go ma ke ni ga ko no te ta mo ko e ka ko chi ke men ko ga ma ste mo na ni ga ka Ika isit ko ika sit sigemen ma keegi nawent. Wai ka isin sot tegen skoni ganan mi ma keegi nawent. Ki nawent tam ma. Tawi siang ito anis snagi oni kena to mi ge benotsi baby sak uske ge ito we ma kanina anik ma. Kagi asingis no to we kan tame ko ki ma kan wet ma. Keeseekoose mi we isin ikate ko ge skoni ganan mi o mi ma ke isin mi se ko me o se ko ke ni na ma ka ben na si gong ni ben mi ma mi na ga ta semana ni ni api ta go ik chige kira ge go ma ta men se ma no gom ab chiga se men na go ma kina we ma no gom ka ma mu no go ma ke go ma ga we ta sin ta ma ka ba mi ta sin ta ma go ma no gom we ma se we ko me ka gi se kana op mi go we kina ti o ko me go we mi we anis ni we te kam snap ke si ke ke we te mi ma ke ni ma gi chi we mi ma ita so ke mi ma ki ken dan we me ke ni ka yong pi ke o mi ma ke no anis mi we te anis ke pe kan ke no mana to wa ke no mi te ke no anis to kan ke no ta chi ke o beta se pe si kon mi ke ka gi ni kan skamot we kana ti o ka me kon we me ka te o kana mi ke mi ka si kan ma si kan op mi ko ma si kan op mi ko we ape no chien ka gi siona chot ka kitwat na mi ma se ko no ko ma kam ke ka te ni gen we ko nai kanan we ni sa chiu se ko ma gi ta chiu we ape no chien na mi ma si ken da o kan wi wen ma ran na yas non dan mitäs tam kigate we ni we kenda min wenen ma min ek paisin kaswat mem to go si ek ma ni da kinai na o ki ma ni sa chu ni no ma kan to ha me go ge ji o ma ga ji ga no na go wa mitäs go ge ni ne jek skit to an go wit sta ma we ge ni na ma we ni jek chan sna ben sak ma ga ya te no go wit sit men we no go we no go ma ga wi sit ge go ma ga bin na go Oh, we go chicken. Oh, you know, I'm going to do. Can I get an amicone? Maka, egg, how me communicate it to one?
Thank you, Mr. Hi, Ted. You know, for many that are just learning the language, and you have these four, we have one to come. When they have this moment, when Ted said, this is a historical day, and we get texts from people who are on the agenda to move the program along, it just reveals how out of touch some people are. Because these four people who are coming up, and we have one left, our days are numbered. We all know we have more yesterdays than tomorrows. And out of the 150,000 people that accepted a common experience payment some years ago, the estimate is there's only 45,000 of us left. So when our people have this opportunity on such a historic day to express themselves in English and in their language, I ask all observers, all of our allies that are of non-Indigenous ancestry, stop and listen to yourself. An opportunity for all of us to learn, an opportunity for you to learn, and to not be controlled by that clock. If you have to go and you have another appointment, we'll see you later. This exercise we're going through is the importance of bearing witness. The historical event has been put on the back burners for years and years and years. I know for me, all of my lifetime, and for many of you, because I know some of my buddies are in this room. So please keep that in mind if you're representing an agency. There's a time when that clock doesn't control you. We're now in a position where we control our own destinies. With that, I'd like to call up my friend, fellow residential school survivor, knowledge keeper, Sarah Janelle.
Ichinanakatama, Keeseekoose Tapigi Gitang Kainin. I'm very thankful that I was asked to come and speak here today also. Kitan mi kun nimkina, dinoy maganitok, biotek, kina, apinochiak, no se sinanik. Tam ka matianam tuano kagi mam kaunda kagi mam kamwat waki kagi ayasigango apinochia kagi mega kinumati o kama kongiza tamaga ki anine to kagi aisia sewat kanda kenda jinga nanis mangi ayasi tas untuk taga kanoya kagi gituat achikod nung dinentam kikit magini min tinoy maganitok meninu kagi kinumati makamugong magagi isawat kina. Din sinabi anis kainin man don't say. Gitsini ni dinay makanak. I think a lot of my relatives, I feel for all of the people that went to school here. I didn't get an opportunity to go to school here because we weren't treaty at the time. And I guess now I am very thankful for that. Our mother didn't go to school. but our dad did. He went to Brandon, Manitoba, and he went there for 7, 8 years, and he come home deaf. He married a lady from Cote, and she died. Then later he met our mother. And because his dad signed him off the reserve before they left, he was in treaty. And then when our parents got married, our mother lost her treaty rights. Kiyit nung ute nasin kaya amin. Kika kimi wate tok kungun anin kipi sawat kuya ete kipi mkawa kitas ko. Kange gongi kenda sinya pi kagi sigite mainta. We lived in a little town north here. It was called White Beach, north of Erin. And some of our relatives used to come running away. When they ran away from school, they came to our place. And they used to come and find them, the priest and the police or whoever came and found them. I didn't know anything at that time of how they were treated because I was a little kid also at that time. But I used to see my parents and grandparents, my uncles and aunties. Some of them would have a party or something, and then they'd be crying. And that's the only time, a lot of times, that I heard about what happened. Like I said, at that time, I didn't know. I was just a kid, but now that I grown up, I know what happened. And I know I didn't have anything to do with it, but I apologize to all of you. I know now what happened to you, and I'm very sorry, deeply, deeply sorry. I think of my kids, my grandchildren, my great grandchildren. When I read about those. Ted is my cousin. His dad and my mom were brother and sister. I'd like to thank everyone for being here, for supporting this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stella. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Cuthbert. And thank you, Ted. Sarah, you have no reason to apologize. And to my fellow survivors out there, you have no reason to apologize. We did nothing wrong. We didn't know what we didn't know. We don't have to apologize to no one. I ask my fellow survivors, don't apologize anymore. We didn't understand shame. We didn't understand blameless shame. And we just didn't know. We made mistakes, we all did. We just want to recover, reprogram ourselves based on our ways, our teachings, our learnings. We don't have to adhere to that outside society anymore. I wear this white shirt today to remind me of my first communion, where I had a little bow tie and a white shirt. And I cover it up today with an orange t-shirt with the image of a buffalo. I'm a buffalo person. I don't want to have any part of that horrible experience we all shared. Everything we do is symbolic. And one thing we don't have to do is apologize. Do not apologize. We did nothing wrong. We'll now go into the part of the program where there will be responses from the various departments that are partnering with us and that we work with. And today, I have the great honor of introducing our first response. And it comes from one of our own people, who's a Lieutenant Governor of Saskatchewan, representing our relationship with the Crown and our treaty relationship. He is also a fellow residential school survivor. And when the invitations went out for this historic event today, the first one went to him, and the first one to respond was him. I'm greatly honored today to call him up and recognize his wonderful wife, Donna, Lieutenant Governor of Saskatchewan, one of our very own, and I'm very proud of him. Let's give him a nice Keeseekoose welcome, Mr. Lieutenant Governor Russell Mirasty.
No ako makantik, to timitik. Kitiag. Unigani Ogimakan. Oskag me no tarapitik. Kida mo tarapi mamopik. Kita tamaskat na rakidonot kagisagak. No nas ko mami na Ted gagi piwi samagwak ni di ko dona tapiwi tap metakanot. Tanto tamagia, tapi toa hawaii so go gitia ganoska pigiskuitsik. Nistan nanas ko moni game de go yan the pigiskuin ni do even piwit no hotsi. Ni madu de tin managa to tamagia gan to ta go gitia gusto pigiskuin o gabitsi mitsimena ho. Ni mida tsig uskaya gusto ta kui mitsimena ho. Upigiskuino. Kakalo mino o te wataran tohtamagi tsega kunin naskomog tatamskat na gisto. Wato tsega pin tohtamagi ganots. Good day, ladies and gentlemen, elders, chief, counselors, knowledge keepers, and of course, survivors. It's truly an honor for me to be here today as a Lieutenant Governor of Saskatchewan, but also as a residential school survivor, second generation. To be here to listen, to learn, to acknowledge, and to share your pain. It's important that we have this opportunity to share the knowledge that exists, to write the history that's been written about this country of ours. And it's important to acknowledge the courage of those that are willing to stand up here and have in the past to share their stories, to inform us so that we know the truth. Because it's been said many times before, without the truth, there is no way forward. You know, I stand here before you as a Lieutenant Governor, but also as the Queen's representative, and I do appreciate that relationship that exists, particularly when I look across the room and see the Treaty Commissioner Culbertson sitting here and listening as well and participating. It was a struggle for me to decide whether or not to accept this role, but it's a little off topic, but really it is about that relationship, acknowledging that relationship with the Crown and what it means, but also the history that came with that. But what I do appreciate, and it's been mentioned here, is that elders encouraging us to look forward, not to forget the pain, but to acknowledge it and to learn from it and to create a better place for our children and those yet unborn. So I'll end it there, knowing that there's lots of speakers who want to share with you some words. I do appreciate the opportunity to be here, to share a few thoughts. And as I said, to learn. And I encourage everybody that's listening, not only in this room, but elsewhere, and all Canadians, to open your minds, to learn, to acknowledge the true past and history of this country of ours that we call Canada. With that, thank you. Thank you to the elders, to the leaders. Have a good day.
Hey, Russell, this is where it gets a little tricky. This is where COVID and the COVID rules take over. We'll be going to Zoom. And our first person is supposed to be our national chief, the first woman chief in the history of our national organization, RoseAnne Archibald. Oh, here she is. Good to see you, Chief.
Nice
round of applause for our national chief.
RoseAnne Archibald, Hi, everyone. First, I want to acknowledge the Creator, the world around us, and our place within it. I'm coming to you today from the traditional, unsurrendered, unceded territories of Tsleil-Waututh, Musqueam, and Squamish nations. Miigwech, Eugene, Arkan for leading us in this very difficult ceremony today, and this reporting that you're doing. It's such a difficult space that we all find ourselves in every time we make these recoveries. So miigwech for that. Also want to thank the Keeseekoose singers for the flag song and the honor song, and as well as Ted Kwesdance for his presentation. I particularly would like to say chimiigwech to Keeseekoose First Nation Chief Lee Kitchemonia for the invitation. We did have a conversation about this last week, and so I'm very, very glad I'm here today to share this moment with you, to share prayers with you, to hold this space for healing with you. I also want to acknowledge FSIN and AFN Regional Chief Bobby Cameron, who's on the call or there and presently. And thank you to the Lieutenant Governor, Honorable Russ Mirasty, for his words. And certainly want to acknowledge that Minister Marc Miller is here as well. But most importantly, I want to acknowledge the survivors who are joining in person, and all of the survivors who are watching online, all of the intergenerational trauma survivors as well, of which I am one. Both of my parents and many of my older siblings attended what I call the institutions of assimilation and genocide. And I also want to share that Dr. Pam Toulouse, who is an Anishinaabe scholar, said that 100% of First Nations people suffer from intergenerational trauma, 100%. And it's a result of colonialism. However, the majority comes from these institutions. And I want to say that there are children who never made it home, particularly the 54 little ones that we are holding space for today. They are among the thousands of our little ones who didn't make it home. These institutions, I don't call them schools anymore. I did attend schools in municipalities across Ontario, and not one of those schools had unmarked graves with children in them, not one. And so these residential institutions of assimilation and genocide tore apart our families. They tore at the very social fabric of our communities and our nations. And when they did not return home, that left such a deep wound for families. So we're talking about up to 54 families that were impacted by these little ones not returning home. And that's what we have to talk about every time we make a recovery, is we have to help people understand that these institutions had a specific purpose. And it wasn't a benevolent one. It wasn't with good intentions. It was an attempt to remove our language, our cultures, our family connections. And it is what we're seeing in terms of fallout across the nations we have in Canada, or Turtle Island, I prefer to say, are the result of this ongoing colonial process of which these institutions were a big part. And so I did hear a couple of the speakers say that they knew about this. We always knew what was happening in these institutions. And one of the survivors said, we just weren't believed. And so when we make these recoveries, that's proof. That's long overdue proof that genocide has occurred in Canada. And what's really difficult about this is that the recovery of our children is just beginning. We are at the beginning of over 130 institutions across Canada. And I want to tell all the First Nations in Saskatchewan and across Turtle Island that as National Chief, I stand with you as you work to bring these little ones home, identifying them, giving them names, giving them proper ceremony. These are things that we need to do. And we also have to hold the governments to account, the government of Canada particularly, and the churches. This is the shared history of this country. This is the truth. And that is what I feel is coming into the light, is the truth of Canada. Canada is not a friendly, just, and fair society. We're seeing this as we move along, not only back then, but today. We're seeing evidence of the injustice and inequality, the way our people are treated, for example, in the protests that are happening right now, versus how non-Indigenous people are treated. The myth of Canada, I heard somebody else say that, has to be rewritten. And it can only be rewritten if we take a journey together. And that journey has to be a healing journey, and a healing journey that I'm calling the healing path forward. And the healing path forward is actually, number one, we have to acknowledge that there has to be truth before reconciliation. That's one of the main tenets. The other part of the healing path forward is not about just saying, okay, we're gonna leave this behind now. No, the healing path forward is about accountability. If these were 54 non-Indigenous white children, the RCMP and other authorities would descend upon these sites and begin investigations. These are crime scenes. That's what they are. You don't bury a child without a proper ceremony. You certainly don't bury them in secret. Every single government and person in Canada has the responsibility to influence meaningful and positive change in order for us to move forward. We have to talk about our true shared history and commit to doing better as a country. Sorry, I'm in the city. The government of Canada has to acknowledge that these institutions, the survivors, the intergenerational trauma survivors, require assistance. And not just the announcement that they made last year, which is to help us do these ground penetrating radars, but to fund a national healing fund of some kind. I've been talking about this since I became the national chief. We need not only a healing fund for First Nations, but we need it for Canadians. Many of our allies out there have said to me how devastated they are every time we make these recoveries. They want healing as well. They need healing as well. Just letting the ambulance pass by there. All levels of government have to work with urgency and together with First Nations to rebuild, to recover, and to heal. We need to see real action. And we need to see some kind of process. Every time we recover our children, what do? We can't just do a press conference and talk about it. We need action by the government. You know, I've asked actually that every time we make a recovery that they lower the flags again in honor of these little ones. You know, we need to see actions that show the recognition of the horrors that our people have gone through and continue to go through today. So I invite all of our allies, non-Indigenous Canadians, to stand with us, to listen, to learn, to reflect on this shared history. The more we know about where we've come from and our responsibilities, the better we can address where we are today and find this healing path forward. I want to say that the courage of the survivors who shared their truths and shared their stories is so commendable. But let's also talk about the communities in mourning. Let's also talk about where we need to go as a country to heal the wounds created by genocide on our people through our children and families. Let's talk about how the systems and approaches led to residential institution that remain today entrenched in our systems, designed to hold our people back. I've heard someone say the Indian Act. Most of all, let's talk about the healing path forward as a people and all across Turtle Islands. It's time for healing. So Ninanaskawin for inviting me. Ninanaskawin in my language means I'm grateful, I am thankful, I thank you, and Kisakitin, which means I love you.
Hey. National Chief RoseAnne Archibald, thank you for your participation today and also for being part of an observer of the rest of the program. We greatly appreciate it and wish you safe travels as you travel Turtle Island and try and maneuver your way around all those big trucks downtown Ottawa, who we just heard blaring away. Our next participant is the Minister, Marc Miller. We just received a message that there is added security on the Hill and they have to spend some time making their way to the Hill for question period. However, he's going to be, oh, there he is. He's going to be with us for a while. And him too, he'll have to maneuver the big trucks. Please give him a Keeseekoose Treaty 4 welcome, Mr. Marc Miller, our Minister.
Thank you, Eugene. Anin Buju Tanse, hello. I am, as Eugene mentioned, joining you today from the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. I want to express my deepest respect and gratitude to Chief Lee Kitchemonia, Regional Chief Cameron, and all members of the Keeseekoose First Nation for allowing me the privilege of joining you today on this occasion. Thank you, National Chief, the Lieutenant Governor, to witness these devastating findings and frankly, to witness Canada's ongoing shame in the face of these findings. The painful legacy of Fort Pelly and St. Philip's residential schools, institutions is a deeply personal tragedy for you, for Keeseekoose, the surrounding communities who had their children ripped away. and experienced by all communities, Indigenous communities across Canada. Today is a painful reminder of the abuse and the lasting pain inflicted on so many children, their families, and their communities. We're reminded by the knowledge keepers of the horrific realities that you experienced in residential schools. Not only were children forcibly taken away from their families, but tragically, many didn't return home. None of those children will have known the richness of your culture or grown up surrounded by the love and support of your families and communities. I can't begin to imagine, frankly, the hurt and sadness and questions that this search and discovery has brought up, will bring up, and will trigger in people. I want to acknowledge first and foremost the strength of the knowledge keepers and their testimonies today, and all of the communities who are specifically dealing with this incredible, painful revelation or a truth you already knew, and frankly, the important work that needs to be ongoing and continue towards accountability and, as was mentioned today, closure. Canada will respect the wishes of your leadership and all the communities carrying this burden to uncover the truth and work towards, as I mentioned, healing and closure. Canada remains committed to providing the supports as you undertake this work in your own way, according to your wishes and your community's wishes, and specifically families and survivors. As was mentioned by all of you and by the National Chief just now, the stories of these children must be remembered and honored, and the families deserve the truth so they can work towards that closure that I spoke about, and Canada will continue to support you on that journey. I want to take these last fleeting moments to honor the survivors, the knowledge keepers who have today and before courageously and now continue to speak out. And I do want to take a small moment to extend my greatest respect to those survivors who do continue to suffer in silence. And finally, in the face of continued efforts in this country to deny the truth, and it shouldn't have to be said, but I feel it does, to survivors and your families, I believe you, and Canada believes you. Miigwech.
Hi. Thank you, Minister Miller. Thank you for being a part of our historic day. And we wish you safe travels across Turtle Island as you visit our treaty territories. I'd now like to call up a member of the Fishing Lake First Nation. She is, as far as I know, the first woman treaty commissioner. I know for our province, but I'm not sure about the country. But it doesn't surprise me that Saskatchewan would be Keeseekoose First Nation. Oh, okay, thank you. I'm sorry, Mary. But she's from your nation, and give her a nice welcome, your Treaty Commissioner, Mary Culbertson. Sorry, Mary.
Anin, Indigenous Mary Culbertson, Musqueam. I'm from Keeseekoose, the Musqueam family. I'm the first woman treaty commissioner in Saskatchewan and the first Indigenous woman treaty commissioner. I'm the first lawyer from Keeseekoose, but I hope to not be the last. I'm very humbled to be asked to come home, to be here today with my mom, my spouse, and my family, my uncle, my cousins, and my aunties. It's a very somber day. You don't know whether to clap sometimes or sit there shaking because you hope to have the strength to be able to talk about these things. And growing up here, you know, you would hear the stories, right? Our oral history. You knew places you couldn't go play along where that teacherage used to be. Don't look outside at night because we were always scared of where that playground was and how you'd feel looking at it. Or walking someone home across the road from the teacherage to behind the rink and you'd hear a baby crying in the bush. Those horrible stories like that I remember when we were kids. I didn't go to residential school, my mom went. my Cookham went. I miss Mrs. Father went, where his name was changed. And that's how we have the name Musqua spelt in a French way. They changed our names. They took our languages. And our 3 nations here, our chief of Cote and their counselors and our neighbors at Keys and our relatives, our leadership is all sitting here. The graves in our 3 reserves are full of the consequences of these schools. And those graves keep getting filled. In my job, I have to teach about the treaties. And the one thing I always try to make sure people understand is that the residential schools were born from broken treaty promises. Those were breaches of treaty. Instead of getting a schoolhouse and a teacher on every reserve, we got residential schools because they were cheaper, because they could assimilate us. They could take our culture and our language. They took lives and didn't care. They called us savages. Today, we hold our children dear to our hearts. We wouldn't let anybody hurt them. And sometimes lots of us aren't capable of looking after our children because we inherited a legacy we didn't want to. And we see that evident in these communities with our addictions. Anybody can Google Kamsack, Keeseekoose, Cote, Key, and what they're going to find is about our opioid crisis. They're going to find out about our addictions, our high rates of death. All of that is directly from these residential schools. We have to bury our children. And that's not something our grandparents or our ancestors wanted when they entered into treaty. Our office does research, and we've been working with different dioceses and churches on getting research for some of the Treaty 10 schools, for St. Anthony's School. And sometimes we come up against barriers that are just unbelievable. And as a lawyer, I know those barriers are not legal. And it's still a struggle. So I'm glad Bishop Bolen's here today because we have some talking to do later about one of those barriers we're coming up against. We have the only treaty archives in all of North America, maybe the entire world. And we get requests constantly for people looking for either their identity through their status, because that was taken away from them. We are the only people in this country who have numbers attached to us. Mine is 3670108201. We still have numbers. In what country and what world is that okay? And in having to sit between my people and the Crown, it is a very difficult role. Like our Lieutenant Governor or my friend Russ Mirasty said, it's very hard to take that decision to take this role or not because you sit between your people and you're a representative of the Queen. But here we are today. We're 2 First Nations people who 150 years ago, and the people in our positions were the ones negotiating the treaties. It was lieutenant governors and commissioners negotiated these treaties. And we hope that today we can make those things right that the men before us did wrong. On behalf of my family, my home, my children, thank you for inviting us here today. My aunts, my uncles, I love you. My cousins, our elected leaders, our chiefs, we know how we're all related. I'm very sorry that we have to be together on this day. I hope to come home after the pandemic to have a celebration, not to mourn 54 graves. With that, miigwech.
Hi, hi. Treaty Commissioner Mary Culbertson from Keeseekoose First Nation. I'm going to deviate from the program a little bit, just a little bit, by asking my fellow residential school survivors, who are many times the forgotten people in this crazy life that we live, to please stand for a few minutes. Stay standing, all residential school survivors. And I want to do this because our treaty commissioner is from this nation and I made an error and I want to correct that. I want to ask all residential school survivors to please stand. We have asked the lead singer for the Soto Feather Singers to put down 5 drum beats, same as we do in our ceremonies, in your honor, in our honor, in honor of our schoolmates and our classmates that didn't make it home. Treaty Commissioner Culbertson, this is a lesson from you. Junior? Ladies and gentlemen, how about a nice round of applause for the forgotten people? Residential school survivors. Hi. Let's go now. Now I'd like to call up representing the bishops of Canada today. One of the people behind the scenes of bringing the Pope to our country to do the right thing. Today you are witnessing reclamation. Yeah, nice round of applause for Bishop Bolen. Today we are witnessing reclamation while everybody's talking about reconciliation. And Ted talked about conciliation. There are 4 R's that the Pope has to be reminded of as he makes his journey over here. It's reclamation, repatriation, reparation, and restitution. All of that comes before reconciliation. With that, Bishop Bolen, welcome.
Thank you, Eugene. Thank you all. To begin, I want to acknowledge in a special way the survivors who have spoken, many in their own languages. We need to hear your stories. And I acknowledge the intense emotions that many of you feel today. And I acknowledge how you have suffered. As Ted has said, we have been working over the past months, meeting regularly, reflecting on how the church can walk in solidarity with you in the pursuit of real conciliation. That begins with an apology, not from survivors, from church, from government. And we are profoundly sorry for the role that Catholics played in the schools and the abuse that you suffered, and the racism and the intergenerational trauma. We are sorry, profoundly sorry. But we recognize and are reminded repeatedly that apologies are a beginning and not an end, and that what we need is a new kind of engagement. As Ted said, next steps which have to be real. That's why we've been working on this with the voice of survivors, the voice of survivors in the lead, giving us direction about how we can walk with you in a good way. So in consultation with our working group, I've written a letter to Chief Kitchemonia and identified some of the areas where you are inviting the diocese and the local church to walk with you in terms of gaining as much understanding as possible of what happened at the schools, in terms of records, in terms of education and conciliation needed at all levels of our communities, church and society. So thank you for inviting me here today to be present as you live this difficult moment. And thank you for the inspired leadership which you are giving at Keeseekoose. And thank you to the survivors for the real vision you carry for moving forward for conciliation. Miigwech, thank you.
Hi, Bishop Bolen. Thank you for being here. And I wish you As I was saying, Bishop Bolen, a message to Bishop Lavoie. We know that he's an ally who has worked tirelessly between the seasons to bring the Pope over here along with you. So thank you to both of you. And I do have some quick adjustments to the agenda, which we will adhere to, but I have a note here for Mr. Bill Cashane. His son brought me this. Mr. Cashane is 95 years old. He sends greetings today to all of you here. Recently, he's on the home stretch and he wanted to pass at home. So today he's at home and he sends along a message along with a story that if I have a chance, I will share it with you. But for those of you who are descendants and related to Mr. Bill Cashane, he's here with us in spirit, even though he's not here in body. With that, I turn it over to Mr. Bobby Cameron, who's going to be joining us by Zoom. And as he's coming in on Zoom, I want to introduce the chief, not only as the chief of the FSIN, but also the son of the late Bobby Cameron, one of my classmates at St. Michael's School from 1958 to 1967. Chief Bobby Cameron.
Yeah, thank you, Eugene, and for emceeing and being a part of this journey for many, many decades. Amagwanes noago magantik, nigan mantu kanaskamon miogisa megwats, egwa kiteyak kitemno naskumtenoao ipito ataros pagana, igagi samuan, igagi smustmo. Kakyoe itagotig, ipikskwe, nagatoke askayak, chasamsak, awasasak, nagatoke. We thank our God, our Creator, for a beautiful day, to our knowledge keepers for the pipe ceremony and the prayers and the drum group, Chief Lee Kitchemonia and your council, and the survivors, Chief George Cody and your council, key leadership that are in the room, and all the previous speakers before me all made some really good recommendations and comments. I'm going to be very brief because all the comments that were shared prior were all critical and important and vital in moving forward. We've traveled to many residential school sites, sat, listened, and learned from the survivors and their families. And some of the recommendations going forward is a couple of key things that we took away. And one of them is this: if they can spend X amount of dollars building these residential school sites, they can spend the same amount building healing and wellness centers right at those sites. They can bring those to justice who have harmed our children. That was an item, an action item. They can continue to help heal and restore that faith that many of the survivors are still waiting for. They can restore and return those records directly to the survivors, the descendants, the families and communities where it rightfully belongs. So we can continue to put the pieces of the puzzle together. The Pope will have to and must apologize at a residential school site within our treaty territories. These are some of the recommendations we have heard, and of course there'll be others, but they're all important. You know, we would like to also say to each and every one of you for continuing your journey. Those children that have been discovered recently, and all those loved ones who left before, are looking down and saying, finally, they believe us. Finally, our people can have a proper burial in their own protocols and traditions. Be it the Anishinaabe or the Dene Sontline, or the Woodland Cree, the Swampy Cree, the Plains Cree. the Dakota, the Nakotas, and Lakotas. All of us are family. So it's important that we continue to support and stand with all survivors and their families moving forward. This has been our commitment from day one. It'll continue to be. Back in Mirasty, we held this in the summer, and it was a place where my late dad had attended the residential schools. You see our survivors, the survivors, they give us gifts. In their own little way, they still manage to give us gifts. The gifts of oral teachings and oral stories. Those things can never be taken away from any government. Those things can never be taken away from anybody who wants to do harm to us, because it's here and it's here. We never forget. We always remember. This is what drives us as treaty people, as Indian people. Keeseekoose and surrounding communities, again, Ted Q, for your work you've done. Lieutenant Governor and others, Marc Miller, I know your staff is listening on the line. They had to leave. I thank you for being here as well. Let's continue to walk this walk together. Those unborn that are coming up behind us depend on us to give them a better life, to give them a life where they're going to succeed, knowing that they're loved, they're happy, and they're not going to be abused in any way, shape, or form. Those are our words on behalf of the FSIN, our vice chiefs, Dutch Lara, who is also a survivor, Ali Bear, Heather Bear, and David Pratt, our veterans, our elders, our women council, youth council. I can honestly say this, we can honestly say this. We love each and every one of you. You guys are our friends, and we respect each and every one of you. Hi. Exit.
Hey. Thank you for being with us, Chief Cameron. Just have a couple additions to our agenda. We know it's been a long morning, but bear with us. It's very important that we do the right thing on this one opportunity we get to do this in this community. Earlier, you met our National Chief, RoseAnne Archibald. You met, and she couldn't make it, Governor General Mary Simon, Treaty Commissioner Mary Culbertson. And now we have the Tribal Chief of the Yorkton Tribal Council, Isabel O'Soup. A nice round of applause for Tribal Chief.
Good morning or good afternoon to everyone. I don't know, I must look short. He put the mic way down. I turn it up. I want to acknowledge our elders, everyone who said our prayers for this community today. Acknowledge our drum group, the leadership. Mary, for always your honest, heartfelt words. I want to offer condolences to this community on behalf of the other nations within Yorkton Tribal Council. And I didn't realize I was sitting next to an ally, one of the bishops. I wanted to give him rib shots when I found out he was a bishop. Then I realized he was an ally, and I was like, hey, I better apologize now. I'm speaking truthfully. I want to encourage all of our young people in the room and in our communities and our schools and everywhere. I want to encourage them to learn the history, their history of Canadian government and First Nation people. I encourage them to learn that that we don't forget, that Canada doesn't forget. And once we learn our history, then we get empowered. I think it brings us empowerment to know what our people have been through so that we don't have to carry shame anymore, and that we can be empowered by learning that this is the reason, the way we are, that is not our own doing. and that we're survivors. It's great to hear when you say stand up survivors. It's great to see our survivors in our communities and that their children, we're all survivors. So I want to encourage our young people to learn your history. We have a great program at the Tribal Council. It's not a program, but it's like, it's called the Kairos Blanket Exercise. And I always tell people, if you want to learn the history, take the Kairos Blanket Exercise. It's not just for First Nation people, it's for everybody. We take it all over, all across Saskatchewan and Canada. Our residential school department as well sought after to come and do that project or the little for a lot of organizations. They were in North Battleford a couple of years ago before COVID hit, and they were doing, and North Battleford is like the Kemsack area. They have a lot of relationship building to do over there, and they were there. They were there for judges, and they were there for the police and for the Crown prosecutor, so it's a start. After September 30th in Yorkton, when we had we call it the Orange Shirt Walk, we had probably over 500 people at that walk. And I think our communities and the non-First Nation citizens of Canada have opened their eyes. Once, it's unfortunate, you know, but it's all the uncovering of the unmarked graves that made people open their eyes and they realize that what our survivors have been saying all along is the truth. And it just makes that much more of an impact on them. And so we had over 500 walkers to bring awareness and support and condolences. It's all, we walked the Broadway in Yorkton, and we walked to City Park, and we had survivors tell their stories. And it was really surprising to see that probably 70% of the people stayed to listen to their stories. So if you have opportunity, listen to their stories and hear them. It's a way of their healing as well. After September 30th, I don't think we should be just recognized one day out of the year. I went on our YTC Facebook page and encouraged all organizations that every Friday we wear our orange shirt. And we have organizations within City of Yorkton that are not only recognizing survivors on September 30th, but every Friday of every week of every day. And I encourage everybody else to do the same here. We don't just want to recognize one day out of the year. We don't want to be forgotten. We don't want that to be forgotten. So again, I just want to say condolences to everybody in this room, because we know Cote, Key, we've all been affected. We've all been affected by it, and just encourage you to learn, you know, and pass on that knowledge as well. So it's hard to be the last speaker before lunch. So I'm going to say Chimigwech.
Hi, Tribal Chief Isabel O'Soup. Thank you for not only for being here, but your continued support. And our last presenter this morning, but certainly not the least, another young man I've seen grow up throughout his life. I'd like to ask him to make his way up here. He's the chief of the neighboring First Nation, and with Cote and Keeseekoose and Key, there's really no separation there in terms of families. And I'm so proud of this young man to now have been selected as a leader of the Cote First Nation. Chief Cote, George Cote. Hi.
Miigwech. Apchechin Nungum. George Cote Dishnikash, Gewakan, Cote First Nation. Just like to acknowledge our pipe ceremony that I participated in this morning, that we just got the day prepared for this time. And to acknowledge the drum group as well and the flags that are hanging. and all the delegates that are here today right across Canada. Acknowledge the elders, the chief and his council, the survivors of Keeseekoose First Nation, and most importantly, the children that are sitting in front here that are representing the future of our generation. You know, I really appreciate my council and my elders and the survivors as well, and the children of our community, and also for Cote First Nation. You know, we're the three communities that are here together. And St. Philip's Residential School had a lot of our own members as well coming to our neighboring community here. And, you know, to hear the stories that they've spoken, you know, it's heartbreaking to see how we were treated and still being treated today. In the spirit of the treaties that we signed with the Crown was supposed to be a relationship with the Crown. You know, a treaty right to education wasn't the government giving the religious groups the money to establish these schools in our communities and taking our children away from our parents and our grandparents, which is having a generational effect as we speak today. The school that we're in now, this is a treaty right to education. Our kids get to go home. We don't have to worry about them dying in this school. You know, our mothers and our grandmothers from past generations, you know, I could not imagine the effect it had on them when their child did not come home. And I really appreciate all the work that's being done by Ted and his group here. And also we are going to be doing a ground search at the Cote Indian Residential School that was just east of Kamsack. A part of land that was a part of Cote First Nation, but it was surrendered. And I always say we never surrendered our children. You know, I really appreciate our elders and our pastors of the three communities, you know, with the ceremonies, you know, to move forward and to forgive and to start healing. And we talked about forgiveness here, you know, and forgiveness is hard, you know, at times, you know, and I really like the words that we had my friend said, Eugene, we don't have to apologize. We just got to continue to be healing. You know, my mom doesn't even talk about residential school. I asked her once and she said, I'd just like to leave it behind. I don't want to see you guys going through that, she said. So we're all connected one way or another. And you can see the results of what it done to us, how it affected us in all ways of addictions, and how we are trying to heal as a nation and to bring our communities back into a place of restoration and where we feel comfortable with our future, with our children, and the leadership sitting at the tables, along with the guidance of the elders, that we do move forward. And we thank you for the people that are helping us out at not only our level, but the tribal council level, the FSIN level, and the AFN level, and the United Nations level. The world is starting to acknowledge what the Holocaust that we went through is, and the genocide. You know, I'm really encouraged by the stand that the people that are telling their story. You know how painful it must be, but you know, to release that anger and that bitterness in their hearts, to acknowledge, you know, they are a person as well. Every child matters. And that's what we always talk about. Every child matters. Not only today, but every day. And I thank our band member, Isabel O'Soup, for bringing, you know, world international attention to her being proud of her her heritage, wearing the ribbon skirt. Our children are opening their eyes. Our children are starting to realize, what our grandparents and parents and great-grandparents are going through. They're starting to bring forward their voice so that their children, when they get older, that curse will be removed from the memories of our hearts. I stand here just thanking the Creator for bringing this to light, bringing everything to truth and reconciliation. I'm really proud of my people in the Cote First Nation as we slowly move towards that unity that we always talk about, and acknowledging our past leadership, our past chiefs, our past counselors, our elders that have passed on, wanting that vision where we don't have to no longer live in fear, but to be thankful for the life that we were given from the Creator and to be part of this nation within a nation. So I just wanted to share that and, keep praying, keep loving one another, keep acknowledging one another. We're starting to have steps moving forward with the town of Kamsack where we want to work with the schools as well, since our kids are attending their schools, to understand one another, to understand each other's culture, and to make this a better place to live, which will happen one day. So that me gwech.
Thank you, Chief George Cody. Always a good neighbor, and I have to say, George, Chief Cody, I wish you all the best in the coming little while on the Crow-Stand Indian Residential School findings. Again, it's not going to be easy, but we'll be with you. I just want to clarify a couple of issues. There have been some requests for some people to share a story, and unfortunately, we don't have the time to do that today. The program is running a little longer than expected, and we know that there are diabetics in the room, and we want you to share a meal in a little while in each other's company. So my apologies for that. I also want to clarify for the media that right after we finish our protocol with our honor song and our victory song, that the media conference will move into the resource center. They'll be waiting there for you. And ask all of those who made a presentation today to make themselves available in the resource room for one-on-one with the media. With that, I'll call on Chief Kitchemonia to do the final part of our program before we call on the Soto Feather Singers to close off our program. Chief Kitchemonia.
Thank you, Eugene. Well, we're just about to a close here, but I'd like to thank everybody for sitting through and listening to the stories. We've come to the time now where I'd like to give thanks, and I'd like to give some gifts. I'm just waiting for my Eunice. Do you have the list? Okay. Sorry about that. It's our culture that we give gifts to our visitors and speakers that come to our community. So with that, I'd like to give the first blanket I'd like to give to our MC, Mr. Eugene Arkan. Eugene's a very good man. I met him quite a few years ago, and he's a very stand-up guy. And if something's wrong, he'll tell you right away. So thanks for that, Eugene. The second one I would like to offer a gift to is Mary Culbertson. Treaty Commissioner Mary Culbertson.
Oh, you want to put it on me? Okay. Thanks.
Thanks, Mary. Thank you, Mary. Thank you for coming, Mary. It's an honor to have you here. Come home as well. Next one is Ted Stronkel. As you all know, he's my father-in-law. I have a lot of respect for this man here. He's a very good father-in-law, very good friend. He taught me lots through the years. So thank you, Ted. Next one is Isabel O'Soup, Tribal Chief Isabel O'Soup. Thank you, Tribal Chief. Chief George Cody. Our neighboring community, Chief George Cody. Snagging blanket gitu. Lieutenant Governor, Honorable Russ Mirasty. Bishop Bolen. Clinton Key, representative from Key First Nation. This one's not a snagging blanket, he said, so he wanted to make that very clear. Cuthbert Kashane. Stella Kitchemonia, my mother. Sarah Janai. And last but certainly not least, okay, I want to give this one here to our coordinator for a lot of things is Ted Cusans. He's a former chief, a senator as well. He's been a leader in our community for many years. He's also a very, very good friend of mine and mentor. I have a lot of respect for this man here, so thank you very much for everything, Ted. Okay, all right. Well, that concludes our gift for today. So, all right, I'd like to hand the mic over back to Eugene Arcan.
Thank you, Chief. And I'd like to commend all those that received a gift in our way. We're going to, again, remind the media that there'll be a media conference either for Q&A and or one-on-one in the resource center. We in here will continue our protocol. We're going to end off our program with a honor song to honor not only those who are in this room, but the people who we are commemorating, the missing children in these unmarked graves and the ones that never made it home. After that, we're going to have a victory song. And I had a discussion with the boys before.
Hey, bring that.
And they were having some problems with, do we do a victory song today? And I insisted that we do a victory song. The victory song is, we are here. We're a resilient people. Everything was done to get rid of us. Everything continues to be done to control us. And we're no longer going to put up with it. And that's why we have to have this victory song in honor of those that have left us, in honor of those who are here in this room, but most importantly, in honor of our children and our grandchildren and our chapans, who we all hope doesn't have to live the lives we did with the childhoods lost. With that, Soto Feather, honor song. If you can rise, please do. Hey, victory song. As we close off this program today with this victory song, I want to encourage all of you to shake hands, give a fist pump, and if you feel comfortable in this time of COVID, give each other a hug, something we're not allowed to do in residential school. We encourage you to enjoy your meal, share each other's company, enjoy the room, enjoy the space. It is a safe space. Chief Kitchemonia and his council, I just want to say, on behalf of my wife Laura and I, we are so honored to have been a part of this historic day. Oksana. Oh, thank you. Soto Feather, you were fantastic today. Hi, hi, nice round of applause for Soto Feather. As we relax and enjoy each other's company, I want to take this opportunity to thank the Saskatchewan Indian Cultural Center technicians for being here the past couple of days and helping us with the technology that we're using here. Hi, hi, gentlemen. Safe travels to all of you. To all the guests, safe travels to all of you, and to all the speakers, I'd like to ask them to make their way down the hallway here into the resource center, where you will have an opportunity for one-on-one and question and answer. On behalf of Lorna and I, thank you, Keeseekoose Chief and Council, for the consideration to be a part of this historic day. Hi, hi, naskum na agakyo.